Cowboy met a giant Apache at the canyon fire, and the silent gift Apache carried rewrote destiny. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now back to our main characters. The canyon was quiet, the only sounds the crackling of fire and the whispers of the wind as it danced through the rocks. The night was thick with smoke, the flames from the fire casting long shadows over the jagged cliffs. Jack Dalton, a solitary cowboy, was a long way from home, seeking shelter from a storm that had blown in from the west. His heart beat heavy as he made his way through the twisting paths of the canyon, the sound of his boots echoing against the canyon walls. He had always found comfort in the solitude of the wild, but tonight, something felt different. Something was watching him. He paused, sensing a presence. A figure stepped out from the shadows, tall and commanding. It was a woman, a giant by all means, her figure illuminated by the flickering firelight. She was Apache, with long dark hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through the night. Her presence was like nothing he had ever felt before. There was a calmness about her, but also an undeniable strength. Her name was Nayeli, and she was no ordinary Apache. She was the daughter of a chief, a warrior in her own right, but tonight, she stood before Jack as if fate had brought them together. She didn't speak, only watched him with those deep, unreadable eyes. Jack took a step forward, unsure of what to make of the woman before him. He had heard stories of the Apache, of their strength and their mysterious ways, but he had never imagined meeting one like this. He had seen the scars of battle on many men, but there was something about Nayeli that set her apart. She was not just a warrior. She was a force of nature. The fire crackled louder as the wind picked up, swirling the smoke around them. Jack tried to make out her intentions, but her silence was deafening. He had no choice but to speak. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that gnawed at him. Nayeli finally spoke, her voice low but clear. "I have come to give you a gift," she said. Jack frowned, confused. "A gift?" he repeated, looking at the pouch she carried, the one she had been holding so tightly. She nodded. "A silent gift," she explained. She held the pouch out to him, and Jack took it hesitantly, feeling the weight of it in his hands. It was small, but there was something powerful about it, something that made his chest tighten. "What is it?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nayeli looked at him, her eyes full of wisdom, and simply said, "Destiny." Jack stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say or do. The fire burned brightly between them, but the world around them felt eerily still. Nayeli's gift was more than just an object. It was a symbol, something that could change the course of his life forever. He could feel it in his bones, the weight of the moment. And as the night stretched on, Jack realized that this encounter would be the one that rewrote his destiny. As the flames flickered and the stars above seemed to watch, Jack knew that the journey ahead would be unlike anything he had ever imagined. Nayeli, the giant Apache woman, had come into his life with a purpose. And that purpose would soon be revealed. Jack stood motionless, the pouch in his hands feeling heavier with each passing second. The flickering firelight danced across Nayeli's face, casting shadows that seemed to deepen the mystery around her. Her eyes held a quiet strength, like the stillness before a storm. The wind howled through the canyon, but it felt as though the world had paused, leaving only the two of them in the midst of the chaos. Jack's thoughts raced. What was this gift? And why did it feel like the weight of destiny itself rested in the small bundle? He slowly opened the pouch, his fingers trembling ever so slightly. Inside, there was a small, intricately carved stone, unlike anything he had ever seen. It was smooth, cool to the touch, and it shimmered with an otherworldly glow. He felt a strange pull toward it, a sensation deep in his chest, like the stone was calling to him. Nayeli's voice broke the silence. It is not the stone itself, but what it carries within. A legacy. A truth. A promise. Jack's brow furrowed as he looked up at her, confusion evident on his face. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly, unable to shake the feeling that he was standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable. Nayeli remained still, her gaze unwavering. "This is the gift my people carry. It is the knowledge of our ancestors, passed down through the generations. It is what has kept our tribe strong, even in the face of the greatest challenges. And now it is yours." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Jack could only stare at her, unsure of how to respond. The fire crackled, sending embers into the night sky, but all he could focus on was the weight of the stone in his hand and the deep, unspoken connection he felt to Nayeli. She wasn't just an Apache woman, she was the bearer of something far greater. "Why me?" Jack finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why have you chosen to give this to me?" Nayeli's expression softened, and for the first time, Jack saw a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "Because," she said, "you are not just a cowboy. You are more than that. You are a protector, a keeper of balance. You have the strength to carry this gift, and what it means." Jack took a deep breath, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never thought of himself as anything more than a simple cowboy, a man who lived by the land and the cattle. But Nayeli's words stirred something inside him, something he had never recognized before. He looked down at the stone once more, the soft glow it emitted seeming to pulse with life. He could feel it now, in the pit of his stomach, the sense that this was no ordinary gift. It was a challenge, a call to something greater. Something he had been preparing for without even knowing it. As the fire burned low, Jack felt a new resolve begin to take root within him. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: his life had changed. In that moment, he was no longer just a man wandering the wilds of the American frontier. He was now a part of something far larger, something that spanned generations. The canyon, the fire, Nayeli, everything had led him here. And in that moment, Jack Dalton understood that his destiny was forever intertwined with hers. The quiet wind of the canyon whispered through the trees as if acknowledging the shift in the air. Jack stood tall, the stone now resting in the palm of his hand. And as he met Nayeli's gaze, he knew that whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. Together. The morning light slowly began to seep over the canyon's edge, casting long, golden beams across the jagged rocks. Jack stood on the precipice, staring out into the horizon. The weight of the stone in his hand was now a constant reminder of the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. The gift Nayeli had given him, the silent stone, seemed to carry more than just its physical weight. It felt like it was connected to something deeper, something vast. It was as if the canyon itself, the wind, the fire, they all had a role in leading him to this moment. He turned to face Nayeli, who was standing a few paces away, watching him with those piercing eyes. She had not said much since handing him the stone, but the silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was an unspoken understanding. "What now?" Jack finally asked, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of uncertainty. Nayeli stepped forward, her presence as commanding as the towering cliffs surrounding them. She reached out and placed her hand over his, gently closing his fingers around the stone. "Now," she said softly, "you begin to understand." Jack's brow furrowed, the weight of her words sinking in. "Understand what?" She paused for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "The gift is not just about power," she explained. "It is about balance. About keeping the land, the people, and the spirit connected. You, Jack Dalton, have been chosen to protect that balance." Jack looked down at the stone once more, its surface glowing faintly in the morning light. It seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, as though it was alive with something he couldn't yet grasp. "I'm no hero," he muttered. "I'm just a cowboy." Nayeli smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Perhaps," she said, "but even cowboys can change the world." Jack felt a strange stir in his chest at her words. He had never thought of himself as anything special. He was a man of the land, simple and solitary. But now, with the stone in his hand and Nayeli standing before him, he was beginning to feel that there was more to his life than he had ever realized. You will need to learn, Nayeli continued. There is much to understand about the people you are meant to protect. About the tribe, and the land that has kept us for generations. The stone will guide you, but it is your heart that will determine if you are worthy of its power. Jack looked up at her, meeting her gaze. The seriousness in her eyes was undeniable, but there was also a flicker of something else, something like hope. It was as if she believed in him, even when he did not believe in himself. For the first time in years, Jack felt a spark of something he had long forgotten, purpose. Where do we go from here? He asked, his voice filled with a determination that surprised him. Nayeli motioned toward the path that led deeper into the canyon. We go to the people, she said. To the tribe. There you will begin your journey. You will meet the elders, and they will teach you what you need to know. Jack nodded slowly, the weight of his decision settling in. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about something much bigger. Something that would change his life forever. As they began to walk together, Jack felt the stone's presence growing stronger in his hand. He could sense that the journey ahead would be long and challenging, but there was also a deep sense of calm. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't walking alone. Nayeli was by his side, and the land beneath his feet seemed to call to him, urging him forward. With each step, Jack felt the bond between him, the land, and the people grow stronger. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain: his destiny had been rewritten in this canyon, and there was no turning back. The journey through the canyon was long, and Jack could feel the weight of the stone in his pocket, pulling at him with each step. The early morning light had given way to the harsh midday sun, and the air grew hot and dry as they moved deeper into the heart of Apache land. Jack had never ventured this far before, and though he had spent his life in the wild, this place felt different. It was as if the earth itself held secrets, ancient and waiting to be uncovered. Nayeli walked beside him, her stride effortless as if the desert held no power to slow her down. She had said little since their conversation by the fire, but Jack could sense she was watching him, gauging his every move. They reached a narrow pass between two towering rock faces, the shadows providing a momentary respite from the sun. Nayeli stopped and turned to face him, her expression serious. This is the first trial, she said, her voice steady. You will meet the elders of my tribe. They will test you, just as you will test them. Jack raised an eyebrow, unsure of what she meant. What kind of test? Nayeli's gaze softened for a moment, but there was still a quiet strength in her eyes. It is not about strength of body, Jack Dalton. It is about strength of heart. They will look for the truth of who you are. What is in your soul? Jack felt the stone in his pocket once again, its presence heavy and constant. He had never been one to speak much about his feelings or emotions. He was a man of action, a cowboy who relied on what he could see, touch, and feel. But now, with Nayeli's words hanging in the air, he realized that this journey was about something far more profound than he had expected. As they walked deeper into the canyon, the air grew cooler, and soon they reached a small, hidden valley. The land here was lush, dotted with wild flowers and the sound of running water. It was a stark contrast to the dry, barren land they had passed through, and for a moment, Jack felt a sense of peace wash over him. They were not alone. The valley was surrounded by a cluster of dwellings, simple structures made from stone and wood, blending seamlessly into the landscape. As they approached, Jack noticed the figures standing outside the dwellings, tall, strong figures, each one with an air of quiet authority. The elders. Nayeli led him forward, and Jack followed, his heart beating faster with each step. They were met by a group of men and women, their faces weathered by time and the sun, but their eyes sharp and knowing. One of the elders, a tall man with silver streaks in his dark hair, stepped forward. His presence was commanding, yet there was a gentleness in his gaze. He studied Jack for a moment before speaking. You have come to us, Jack Dalton, he said, his voice deep and calm. But do you understand why? Jack swallowed, unsure of how to respond. He had come here with no clear purpose, only the pull of the stone and the quiet urging of fate. I don't know, he admitted. I was just following what felt right. The elder nodded slowly, as if he had expected this answer. You are not the first to come seeking something, he said. But the question remains, what is it you seek? Jack glanced at Naeli, who stood silently beside him. She did not look at him but at the elders, her gaze unwavering. Jack took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling on him. I seek to understand, he said finally, what this is all about. The stone, the gift, the land, everything. I don't know what it means yet, but I want to learn. The elder's expression softened, and he nodded. The path you walk is not one that can be easily explained. It is a path that must be felt, lived, and understood. If you are willing to learn, we will show you. Jack felt a strange mix of relief and fear at the elder's words. He had come here seeking answers, and now, it seemed, the answers would come, but not in the way he had imagined. They were not to be given to him in words, but in experience. And as the elders led him deeper into their sacred valley, Jack realized that this was just the beginning. The stone, the gift, had only opened the door. What lay beyond was the true test of his heart, his soul, and his destiny. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden light across the valley, Jack felt a sense of peace settle over him. Whatever the future held, he was no longer walking alone. Naeli was by his side, and the land itself seemed to welcome him. And for the first time in his life, Jack Dalton felt like he had found his place. A place where his destiny was waiting to be written. The days following Jack's arrival in the Apache Valley were unlike any he had ever known. The air felt different here, heavier with the weight of history and tradition. The elders had welcomed him, but they had also set him on a path that was not to be walked lightly. Each morning, he rose before the sun, the stone resting heavily in his pocket, a constant reminder of the gift he had been given and the responsibility it carried. Naeli was always nearby, watching him with a quiet intensity that both comforted and unsettled him. Her presence was reassuring, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched not just by her, but by something much larger, something ancient. On the fourth day, the elders called him to the center of the valley. The circle of stone dwellings, which had seemed so peaceful at first, now felt like a gathering of silent witnesses. Jack stood before them, his heart pounding in his chest. You have lived with us for 4 days, said the elder who had first spoken to him. His voice was deep and steady, like the rumbling of distant thunder. In that time, you have seen our people, our land, and our ways. But you have not yet seen the heart of our tribe. Today, you will come to understand. Jack nodded, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. He had not yet truly understood anything. The elders had shown him how they lived, how they honored the land and the spirits, but he had not yet felt the connection they spoke of. He had not felt the weight of their traditions on his own soul. The elder extended his hand to Jack, inviting him to follow. Without a word, Naeli moved to his side. They walked in silence, the path leading them to the edge of the valley, where the land dropped away into a vast expanse of wilderness. The air here was different, cooler, almost alive with an energy Jack could not explain. It was as if the land itself was breathing. The elder spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. This is the heart of our people. The land that gives us life, that connects us to our ancestors. Jack looked around, taking in the raw beauty of the land. The valley behind him seemed far removed from this place. Here, the earth was untamed, wild, yet somehow welcoming. The elder pointed toward a large rock formation in the distance. There, at the base of those rocks, is where the spirits of our ancestors rest. The stone you carry, he said, his gaze falling to the small, glowing stone in Jack's hand, was given to you because you are meant to walk the path of those who came before us. Jack felt a chill run through him at the elder's words. The stone pulsed in his hand, as if it had a life of its own. The ground beneath his feet seemed to hum with energy. He had always thought of himself as a simple man, a cowboy with little connection to anything beyond his cattle and the land he worked. But now, standing on the edge of this ancient place, he felt as though he was part of something much larger. The elder continued, his voice low and steady. "This is the trial," he said. "The test of your heart." Jack's pulse quickened. "What do I have to do?" The elder smiled, a glimmer of something knowing in his eyes. "You do nothing. The land will test you. The stone will guide you. But only if your heart is pure." Jack stared at the elder, confused. "My heart is pure," he said. It was a statement, not a question. The elder did not answer, instead gesturing for him to approach the rocks. Jack moved forward, feeling an unexplainable pull toward the formation. As he drew closer, the stone in his hand grew warmer, its glow intensifying. He stepped into the shadow of the rocks, the ground beneath his boots firm and steady. The air felt thick with the weight of the moment. It was as though the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to act. Suddenly, Jack felt a shift in the air. A gust of wind swept through the valley, carrying with it a whisper, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "You are ready." The words echoed in his mind, and for a moment, Jack was still. The voice faded, leaving only silence in its wake. But the silence was not empty. It was filled with something ancient, something alive. Jack stood there, the stone in his hand pulsing with energy. He had no idea what was happening, but he knew this was just the beginning. The land had spoken, and the test had begun. Jack stood still, his breath shallow, as the words echoed in his mind. "You are ready." The voice, though soft, had a weight to it, a command that settled deep in his chest. The stone in his hand warmed with a pulse that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. He could feel it. This was not just a test of the heart, but a challenge of the soul. The land seemed to be alive around him, the rocks, the trees, even the air itself vibrating with a quiet, ancient energy. It was as though the earth had a memory, one that Jack was now part of. He stepped forward, the ground firm beneath his boots, and approached the base of the rock formation as Naeli's words came back to him. "The stone will guide you, but only if your heart is pure." Jack didn't fully understand what that meant, but he had come this far, and there was no turning back. The whisper in his mind had faded, but its meaning lingered. He had to trust in something greater than himself. His fingers tightened around the stone, and he closed his eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of it settle within him. The cool canyon breeze brushed against his skin, but there was no sound, no movement, just a heavy, expectant silence. Slowly, Jack lowered himself to his knees before the rocks, as if he was submitting himself to whatever was about to unfold. For a long moment, he felt nothing but stillness, the weight of his own thoughts pressing in. Then, just as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden glow across the canyon, Jack felt a shift. A subtle vibration beneath him, a pulse of energy that radiated from the earth itself, rose through his body. The stone in his hand grew hotter, and for the first time, Jack understood. The stone was not just a gift. It was a connection, a conduit to something beyond the physical world. The pulse of energy was the land itself calling to him, its ancient power flowing through him. Jack opened his eyes, and in that moment, the world seemed to change. The rocks in front of him no longer looked like mere stone. They seemed alive, shifting, breathing. And in the distance, he could see movement, figures emerging from the shadows. His heart raced as he realized that he was not alone. The spirits of the land had come. A figure stepped forward from the group, tall and regal, with features that seemed both human and otherworldly. Jack's breath caught in his throat. It was the elder who had spoken to him before, but there was something different about him now. The elder's eyes locked with Jack's, and for a moment, it felt as though the earth itself was speaking to him through the elder's gaze. "You have come," the elder said, his voice deep and rich, like the rumble of distant thunder. "And now you understand." Jack's mind whirled, but he could not find the words to speak. The elder stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "The stone you carry is not just a gift," he continued. "It is a key. A key to unlocking the balance of the land. But it is not the stone that holds the power, it is the heart of the one who carries it. The words felt heavy, and Jack knew, deep down, that this was not just about him. It was about something much larger, something that spanned generations. "What do you want me to do?" Jack finally asked, his voice hoarse. The elder smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "You have already begun," he said. "The path you must walk is not easy, but it is the only path. You must protect the land, its people, and its spirit. Only then will the balance be restored." Jack stood, the stones still pulsing with energy in his hand. It was as if the earth itself was urging him forward, calling him to fulfill his destiny. He had no choice now but to follow, to embrace whatever awaited him. As the elder and the others faded into the shadows, Jack knew one thing for certain: his life, his destiny, had changed forever. And the journey ahead would take him places he could never have imagined. The days following Jack's encounter with the elder passed in a blur of contemplation and quiet action. He spent most of his time wandering the valley, trying to understand the weight of the task that had been laid before him. The stone continued to pulse with energy, a constant reminder of his new purpose, but he still struggled to comprehend what it truly meant. Nayeli, ever watchful, had been a silent presence by his side, offering no words of comfort or guidance, but Jack could feel the weight of her eyes on him, as though she too was waiting for him to discover what he had to do. One morning, as the sun began to rise over the distant peaks, Jack stood at the edge of the valley, looking out toward the wild, untamed wilderness that stretched endlessly before him. The air was cool, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink as the first light of dawn broke across the horizon. He had never felt so small, yet so connected to something greater. He clenched the stone in his hand, its warmth spreading through his fingers, grounding him. He was no longer just a cowboy. He was part of something much larger, something that spanned generations, something that had called him here. As Jack stood there, contemplating his place in the world, Nayeli appeared at his side, her silhouette framed by the rising sun. She did not speak at first, but Jack knew she had come to say something. "It's time," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of years of knowledge. "Time for what?" Jack asked, still unsure of what he was meant to do. Nayeli's gaze softened, but there was still an air of quiet resolve about her. "It's time for you to face the first true test," she said. "The test of your heart. The stone will not guide you further until you have passed it." Jack looked down at the stone, its glow now faint but steady. He had no idea what this test would entail, but something deep within him told him that this was the moment he had been waiting for. The stone had chosen him, but now it was up to him to prove that he was worthy. "What do I have to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling in his mind. Nayeli didn't answer immediately. She looked out at the horizon, her eyes distant, as though she was seeing something Jack couldn't. Finally she spoke again. "You must journey into the heart of the land," she said. "The land will reveal the truth to you, but only if you are ready to face it." Jack's heart raced as her words sank in. The heart of the land. He had walked this land before, but never with the sense of purpose that now filled him. The idea of venturing further, deeper into the wilderness, stirred something inside him, fear, yes, but also a sense of destiny that he could not ignore. "And how will I know when I have passed?" Jack asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Nayeli turned to him, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "You will know," she said simply. With those words, she turned and began walking toward the path that led into the wilderness. Jack hesitated for a moment, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. But then, with a deep breath, he followed her. As they walked together, the sun now fully risen, Jack felt the pulse of the stone grow stronger in his hand. It was as though the land itself was responding to his presence, calling him forward, urging him to move deeper into its embrace. The path before him was not clear, but he no longer needed it to be. He had come this far, and now, there was no turning back. The wilderness loomed ahead, wild and untamed, but Jack knew that within it lay the answers he sought. Answers not just about the stone, but about himself. And so, with Nayeli by his side, Jack stepped forward, ready to face whatever trials awaited him. As they ventured into the unknown, the land around them seemed to come alive, the wind whispering through the trees, the earth beneath their feet shifting with every step. Jack didn't know what lay ahead, but he was ready. The stone would guide him, and the land would reveal its secrets when the time was right. For the first time in his life, Jack felt truly alive, not just a man wandering the world, but a man on a journey of discovery. The journey that would shape not only his fate, but the fate of everything he had come to love. As Jack and Nayeli continued their journey deeper into the wilderness, the air around them seemed to grow thick with anticipation. The land was different here, wild and untamed, untouched by the hands of men. The trees stood tall, their branches reaching toward the sky like ancient sentinels, while the ground beneath their feet felt soft, as if it had not been disturbed for centuries. The stone in Jack's hand pulsed with a steady rhythm, its glow faint but present, guiding him forward. Nayeli walked beside him in silence, her presence a steadying force. She had not spoken much since they set out, but Jack could feel the weight of her watchful gaze. It was as if she was waiting for him to discover something he had yet to understand. The further they went, the more the land seemed to open up before them. The dense forest gradually gave way to a vast, open plain, the tall grass swaying gently in the breeze. The sun was high in the sky now, casting long shadows across the ground. It was peaceful here, almost serene, but Jack could not shake the feeling that something was waiting for them just beyond the horizon. As they approached the center of the plain, Jack felt a sudden shift in the air, a subtle change that sent a shiver down his spine. The stone in his hand grew warmer, its pulse quickening. He looked at Nayeli, who had stopped walking and was staring ahead, her eyes narrowed in concentration. Jack followed her gaze, his heart pounding in his chest. In the distance, he could see a figure, standing alone in the middle of the plain. The figure was tall, cloaked in shadows, and as Jack stared, he felt a sense of recognition. It was as if he had seen this figure before, in a dream or a vision, but he could not place where. The figure slowly began to move toward them, and Jack's heart raced. Nayeli did not speak, but Jack could feel her tense beside him, her hand resting on the hilt of the dagger at her side. The figure drew closer, and Jack could now see that it was a man, dressed in the traditional garb of an Apache warrior. His face was painted with the symbols of his people, and his eyes glowed with an intensity that sent a thrill of fear through Jack's chest. The man stopped a few feet from them, his gaze shifting from Jack to Nayeli and back again. There was a moment of silence, and then the man spoke, his voice deep and calm. "You have come far," he said, his words carrying the weight of authority. "But you are not yet ready." Jack felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice steady despite the unease building inside him. The man's gaze never wavered. "The stone you carry is not just a gift," he said. "It is a test, a trial of the heart. You must prove yourself worthy of its power." Jack's mind raced, the words echoing in his ears. He had thought he understood the stone's purpose, but now he realized there was more to it than he had imagined. "What do I need to do?" Jack asked, his voice low, his grip tightening on the stone. The man did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped back, motioning for Jack to follow him. "Come," he said. "The land will show you what you must do." Jack looked at Nayeli, who gave him a slight nod of encouragement before following the warrior. The three of them moved deeper into the plain, the tall grass parting as they walked. The air grew heavier, the silence more pronounced, until they reached a clearing in the center of the plain. The man stopped in the middle of the clearing and turned to face Jack. "This is where you will face the trial," he said, his voice calm but firm. Jack felt the stone's pulse quicken in his hand, its warmth now almost burning against his skin. The man stepped back, his eyes never leaving Jack's. "You must face your heart, your soul," he said. "Only then will you know if you are ready." Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he knew one thing for certain: this was the moment. he had been waiting for. The moment when everything would change. Jack closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling the stone's warmth spread through his fingers. He didn't know what the trial would be, but he was ready. The land had called to him, and he had come. And now, he would face whatever lay ahead. As the wind whispered through the tall grass, Jack stood tall, his heart steady, his purpose clear. This was his path, and nothing would stop him from walking it. As Jack stood in the clearing, the stone in his hand pulsed with an energy that filled the space around him. The wind had stilled, the air thick with anticipation. The warrior, who had led him here, stood silently at a distance, watching him with steady eyes. The stone's warmth spread up Jack's arm, flowing through his chest and down to his heart. It felt as though it was calling to him, urging him to face whatever lay ahead. The man's voice broke the silence. "This is your trial, Jack Dalton. You must face your heart, your truth." Jack swallowed, the weight of his words settling in his chest. He wasn't sure what was meant by his truth, but something deep inside told him that this moment was not one he could walk away from. The ground beneath his feet felt solid, yet there was a sense of fragility in the air. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and in the stillness of the moment, he could hear the whispers of the land. It wasn't just the wind. It was something ancient, something beyond his understanding. As the whispers grew louder, the stone began to glow brighter in his hand. His heart raced, and the pulse of the stone seemed to match the beat of his own. He felt the land calling to him, as if it was alive, waiting for him to embrace it fully. "What must I do?" Jack asked aloud, his voice steady, though doubt lingered at the edges. The warrior stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Jack's face. "You must open your heart to the land," he said. "Only then will you understand the power you hold." Jack's grip tightened on the stone, its warmth intensifying. He could feel his breath quicken, the air around him shifting as if it were responding to his inner turmoil. The stone was more than just an object, it was a part of him, a key to something greater. But what did that mean? What was he meant to do with it? "Trust yourself," the warrior said, sensing Jack's uncertainty. "The stone will guide you, but it will not reveal its true power until you accept who you are." Jack nodded, though he still didn't fully understand. He had lived his life as a cowboy, a man of the land, but this journey had opened up a side of him he hadn't known existed. There was something inside him, a strength he had never tapped into before, and it was now calling to him. Slowly, Jack lowered the stone to the ground, placing it gently in the center of the clearing. The moment it touched the earth, the air around him seemed to shift. A low hum filled the space, as though the land itself had awakened. The whispers grew louder, and for the first time, Jack understood. The land was alive with the stories of those who had come before him. The ancestors, the spirits of the earth, had been waiting for him to listen, to connect with them. He felt the weight of their presence, their eyes upon him, and with it, a deep sense of responsibility. This was not just a test of strength, it was a test of heart, of spirit. Jack closed his eyes once more, allowing himself to be enveloped by the whispers. He could feel the earth beneath him, solid and unyielding, but also full of life. It was as though the land had taken him in, wrapping him in its embrace, and he was no longer alone. The stone, still glowing faintly, seemed to pulse with the rhythm of his heart. It was no longer just a stone, it was a part of him, a symbol of the bond between him and the land. In that moment, Jack knew that he was no longer just a cowboy. He was a protector, a keeper of the land's balance. The land had chosen him, and he had chosen to answer its call. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, casting a warm glow over the valley, Jack opened his eyes. The warrior stood before him, a silent witness to the transformation that had just occurred. Jack could feel the weight of the stone in his hand, but it was no longer a burden. It was a gift, a responsibility, and a calling. "You have passed," the warrior said simply, his voice calm but filled with a quiet reverence. Jack nodded, the truth of his path now clear in his heart. The journey ahead would not be easy, but he was ready. He had found his purpose, and nothing would stop him from fulfilling it. The land had spoken, and Jack had listened. And with that, he knew that his journey was just beginning.